Nobody warns you about the moment your marriage ends. There's no siren, no flashing light, no concerned friend pulling you aside to say, hey, heads up. Your life is about to crater on a Friday night in your mother-in-law's living room, while a Stevie Wonder playlist runs in the background. Mine ended at 9:47 p.m. on a Friday in Dilworth, Charlotte, North Carolina. I know the exact time because I was staring at the ceiling, unable to move my legs, when Corbett Malone crouched beside me and said, "Don't move, buddy." I called 911. It's 9:47. I'd never spoken more than 6 words to Corbett Malone in my life. But in that moment, I loved that man like a brother. Welcome back to Dad's True Revenge. Grab your snacks, get comfortable, and remember, the people in these stories had every chance to behave themselves. They just chose wrong. Drop a comment and be sure to subscribe. You're going to love it here. My name is Dale Sutton. I'm 41 years old. I work in structural engineering at Crestline Industrial Group in South Charlotte. And for the past 7 years I have been married to a woman named Loretta, whose family, the Go-to-Beds, have made it their collective mission to remind me, at every possible opportunity, that I am not good enough for her. I'll give you a moment with that name. The Go-to-Beds, yes, that is their actual name. Corrine Go-to-Bed, Brent Go-to-Bed, Waverly Go-to-Bed. I used to think that a family saddled with a surname like that would develop a sense of humor about the human condition. A little humility, a little grace, some awareness that life is absurd and we're all just doing our best. They did not develop any of those things. Instead, they developed an extraordinary talent for looking down on other people, which I suspect is what happens when your last name is Go-to-Bed and you desperately need something, anything, to feel superior about. I'm not a psychologist. I'm just an engineer who notices load-bearing structures and where they're weakest. The contempt was never overt. The Go-to-Beds were too refined for that, or at least they thought they were. It was the pauses. The way Brent, Loretta's brother, would look at my truck and then look away without saying anything, like the truck had personally wronged him. The way Corrine, their mother, the family's emotional nerve center, would smile at me with her whole face except her eyes. The way Waverly, the birthday girl, would ask about my job in that particular tone people use when they're asking a question they already find boring. 7 years of this. 7 years of showing up being cordial, eating Corrine's dry pot roast and calling it delicious. Watching football with a man who'd shoved me at a cookout 18 months earlier and laughed like it was the funniest thing he'd ever seen. That was the first time. Brent shoved me from behind while I was standing at the grill. I stumbled forward and nearly put my hand on the burner. He laughed. His college buddy laughed. Loretta was inside and didn't see it. I didn't say anything that day. I just steadied myself, turned around, and looked at him. Noted, I thought. Noted and filed. That's the thing about me that Brent never figured out. I'm a structural engineer. I don't react to problems emotionally. I document them, I assess load-bearing capacity, I figure out where the weakness is, and then I wait for the right conditions. I'd been waiting for a while. I'd also, about 6 weeks before Waverly's birthday party, had a very quiet, very productive 2-hour meeting with a man named Thaddeus Birch. Thaddeus is an attorney. He has an office on South Tryon Street, excellent coffee, and the kind of patient eyes that lawyers develop when they spend 20 years listening to people tell them about problems that were preventable. I told him about the cookout, about the forearm bruise I'd photographed, about the 3 separate text messages Brent had sent me in the months since, each one a little more aggressive than the last. I told him about the time before that, Brent's elbow, deliberately thrown during a family touch football game at Thanksgiving. I told him all of it. Thaddeus wrote things down. Then he told me to keep documenting. So I did. I should also tell you about Roscoe Tillman. Roscoe has been my best friend since we were both 19 years old, sharing a terrible apartment in Noda when Charlotte was still figuring out what it wanted to be. Roscoe is now a senior detective with the Charlotte-Mecklenburg Police Department. He is 6'2", unhurried in every possible situation, and has a memory like a filing cabinet that was built by God personally. Roscoe had texted me that afternoon, around 4:30. I still have the message. You sure you want to go tonight? Say the word and I'll come with you. I told him I was fine, that it was just a birthday party, that I was a grown man who could eat dry pot roast and make small talk for 3 hours without incident. I would regret that, but not for the reasons you'd think. We arrived at Corrine Go-to-Bed's house in Dilworth at 7 on the dot. The house was a nice colonial and ideal way, the kind of neighborhood where people power wash their driveways on Sunday mornings and argue about HOA paint colors. Corrine had lived there for 20 years and treated it like a museum of her own importance. There were maybe 30 people there. Loretta immediately dissolved into the family like sugar into warm water, laughing, hugging, moving from room to room. I got myself a beer, found a position near the back porch, and prepared to endure. Brent Gotobed found me within 10 minutes. Of course he did. Dale. He said my name the way you'd say a minor inconvenience, like a parking ticket. Brent. I matched his energy precisely. He was a big guy, Brent. Played college ball at App State and never let anyone forget it. He coached youth football now and had the personality of every youth football coach you've ever met. Loud, territorial, convinced that his ability to intimidate teenagers made him formidable in the broader world. He stood beside me, sipping his drink, surveying the party like he owned it. "You look tense," he said. "I'm relaxed. You always look like you're calculating something." "That's because I am," I thought to myself. "Just enjoying the party, Brent." He smirked and drifted away. I watched him go. 3 hours later, the night had settled into that comfortable late party rhythm. Music low, conversations overlapping, people loosening up. Corbett Malone, who I'd gathered was an old neighbor of Corrine's, was nursing a glass of red wine near the bookshelf with the quiet eyes of a man who'd learned long ago to observe rather than participate. I liked him immediately and instinctively, the way you like people who seem to actually be paying attention. I didn't know then just how important Corbett Malone was about to become. That's when I heard Brent's voice carry from inside. Loud, theatrical, performing for a crowd. He was telling a story, and in the story the punchline involved my younger sister Gail. I won't repeat what he said. I'll just tell you it was the kind of comment that a certain type of man makes about a certain type of woman when he thinks he's in safe company and nobody who cares is listening. He was wrong about that. I set my beer down on the porch railing, walked inside. Calm. Quiet. The way water is calm right before it goes over a waterfall. The small crowd around Brent was doing that uncomfortable go-along laughter. Loretta was not in the room. Waverly was, though, leaning against the wall with a birthday girl smirk, watching her brother perform. "Say it again," I said. The laughter stopped. Brent turned, smiled. "There he is. Dale, buddy, I was just... Look at me and say it again." The room went quiet in the particular way rooms go quiet when they sense that something real is about to happen. Not manufactured family drama, but something with actual gravity behind it. Brent's smile didn't waver. He was good at this part, the performance of being unbothered. "Lighten up, man." It was a joke. It wasn't funny. "You're embarrassing yourself, Dale." "Am I?" He put his drink down, rolled his neck, and I saw it, the decision forming behind his eyes. Brent Gotobed had been the biggest, loudest man in every room he'd ever occupied, and right now I was making him look small in front of people who mattered to him. He wasn't going to let that happen. He clapped me on the shoulder, hard, and steered me sideways like he was trying to make it look friendly. "Come on, let's go outside, cool off." I moved toward the back porch. He followed. I didn't see the second hand coming. That's the thing about Brent Gotobed. He wasn't angry, he was deliberate. What happened next wasn't a shove. It wasn't an accident. It wasn't horseplay. It was a body slam. Both arms. Full force. From behind. While my back was turned, I hit the hardwood floor of that porch at an angle that I will later learn, from a physician who will use the word impact 3 times in one sentence while making direct eye contact with a police officer, was not consistent with a stumble. Then I couldn't move my legs. Not my legs felt heavy. Not my legs were unsteady. I could not move them. At all. I lay there on Corrine Gotobed's back porch, staring up at a ceiling fan that was spinning lazily, and I experienced the specific, clarifying terror of a man who does not know if he will walk again. Loretta appeared above me. I remember thinking, here it is. Here's the moment where she chooses me. That hopeful, stupid, persistent thought that 7 years of marriage plants in you like a weed you can never fully pull out. "Walk it off," she said. "Stop being a baby. Walk it off." I couldn't walk anything off. I couldn't walk at all. Waverly appeared behind her sister. "Oh my God, he's doing this on purpose. You're ruining my birthday, Dale." "Seriously?" Brent stood at the edge of the porch with his arms crossed, smirking. Not worried, not guilty, just smirking. The way a man smirks when he's done something he thinks he's going to get away with. Corbett Malone pushed through the small crowd that had gathered. crouched beside me, put one hand on my arm. "Don't move," he said quietly. "I called 911. It's 9:47. Don't move." She was the lead paramedic on the call. Mid-30s, no nonsense. The kind of person who walks into chaos and immediately makes it smaller. She assessed me with practiced efficiency, asked me to squeeze her fingers, asked me to push against her hand with my foot. I couldn't do either. She asked me what happened. I told her. She listened without expression. Then she looked at the angle of my body on the floor, looked at where Brent was standing, looked back at me. She called for police backup, not as a formality, not as protocol. She picked up her radio and she called for police backup, with the particular tone of a person who has already made up her mind about what she is looking at. As they were preparing to move me, Odessa leaned close enough that only I could hear her. "I've seen this injury before," she said. "I'm filing my report accordingly." I didn't fully understand what that meant until the next morning. But I would. Hospital ceilings are all the same. Acoustic tile, fluorescent light, the occasional water stain that nobody ever explains. I spent a lot of time staring at the ceiling of Atrium Health Carolina's medical center on Saturday morning, doing the kind of thinking you do when your body has gone quiet and there's nothing left to distract you from yourself. The MRI results came in at 8:14 a.m. The attending physician, a careful man named Dr. Lawrence, who chose his words the way a watchmaker chooses his tools, sat beside my bed and laid them out. Severe spinal cord compression. Significant nerve involvement. 2 points of impact that, in Dr. Lawrence's clinical assessment, were, and here is where he looked at the uniformed officer standing near the door, inconsistent with a simple fall. He said impact 3 times in that conversation. Each time he made eye contact with the officer. I had not missed this. The officer had not missed it either. Roscoe Tillman arrived at my room at 9:03 a.m. He arrived before Loretta did. "I want you to sit with that for a moment." My best friend, who I had to be talked into calling, arrived at the hospital before my wife of 7 years. Roscoe walked in with 2 coffees and the expression of a man who has already read the overnight reports and is choosing his words carefully. He handed me a coffee, sat down, said nothing for a moment. Corbett Malone gave a full statement. He said finally, detailed, consistent. He was standing 8 feet away and had a clear sightline. I said, "Good. The paramedics' report flagged the injury as inconsistent with an accidental fall." She told me she would. He looked at me. "Brent Gotobed is going to be asked to come in for questioning today. You understand what that means?" "It means he's not going to be smirking for much longer." Roscoe almost smiled. Almost. Loretta arrived at 9:31 a.m. She did not come alone. She came with Corrine and with Waverly, who apparently felt that the hospital room of the man she'd accused of ruining her birthday was an appropriate place to be the morning after. The Gotobed family did not disappoint. Loretta looked at me with the expression of a woman who has been coached on the drive over. Concerned, but contained. Sympathetic, but strategic. "How are you feeling?" she asked. "I can't feel my legs, Loretta. The doctors think it'll improve, though, right? That it's temporary?" There it was. Not, "I'm so sorry this happened." Not, "I should have believed you." Not, "I love you and I'm scared." Just, "Is this going to be inconvenient long-term?" Corrine stood near the window with her arms folded, looking at me the way she always looked at me, like I was a problem that her daughter had brought home and never properly resolved. Waverly was on her phone. "We need to talk about how we handle this," Loretta said. "As a family." "Handle what?" "Dale. Brent didn't mean." "Loretta. It was a situation that got out of hand and—" "Loretta." She stopped. "I'd like you to meet someone," I said. Roscoe stepped out of the bathroom. He had not been in there for any particular reason. He had simply been waiting. He is a patient man, Roscoe Tillman, and he has excellent instincts for theater. His badge was visible on his belt. The temperature in that room dropped about 15 degrees. "This is Roscoe Tillman," I said. "Detective Charlotte Mecklenburg. He's been briefed." Corrine unfolded her arms. Waverly looked up from her phone. Loretta's carefully managed expression developed a crack. Roscoe said simply, "Mrs. Sutton, Mrs. Gotobed, Miss Gotobed." He nodded at each of them in turn. "I'm going to need to ask you all some questions at some point today. Nothing to worry about right now. Just wanted to introduce myself." Nobody in that room said a word. It was the most beautiful silence I had ever heard. Here is what the Gotobed family did not know. sitting in that hospital room trying to compose themselves. 6 weeks earlier, I had walked into Thaddeus Birch's office on South Tryon Street with a folder. In that folder was the following: a dated photograph of the forearm bruise from the cookout incident, 3 screenshots of text messages from Brent, each progressively more threatening, each carefully preserved with metadata intact, a written account of the Thanksgiving football incident, signed and dated by me the night it happened, and a note, handwritten because I am thorough, documenting every prior instance of physical aggression, going back 4 years. Thaddeus had looked through the folder slowly. Then he looked up at me and said, "Mr. Sutton, what exactly are you expecting to happen?" I told him I didn't know precisely, but I wanted to be ready. He told me I was already more prepared than 90% of the clients who came through his door after something bad happened. Then he told me to keep documenting, gave me his direct number, and charged me for 2 hours of consultation, worth every penny. What even Roscoe didn't know, what nobody knew yet, was the additional item I'd placed at the back of the folder, a printout. A name, an address in the Steel Creek neighborhood of Charlotte. A man named Gavin Purcell. Gavin Purcell had been Brent Gotobed's neighbor 2 years earlier, before Gavin moved his family to Steel Creek. Gavin and Brent had a dispute, the details of which I'd pieced together from a mutual acquaintance, a public court record that had subsequently been sealed, and one very informative conversation at a neighborhood cookout I'd attended with Loretta 3 years ago, when Gavin had pulled me aside and said quietly, "Between you and me, watch yourself with that brother-in-law of yours. He put me in the ER. Family pressured me into settling. I've regretted staying quiet ever since." I had noted that too. Thaddeus Birch found Gavin Purcell in 48 hours. Gavin Purcell, it turned out, had been waiting for a reason to stop staying quiet. His statement was waiting in Thaddeus's office before Brent even got to the police station. Brent went in for questioning Saturday afternoon, thinking it was a formality. The kind of thing big, loud, confident men think happens to other people. He walked in with the smirk still operational. The smirk did not survive the meeting. It would be the last time Brent Gotobed smirked for a very long time. Loretta came back to the hospital that evening, alone. She sat beside my bed for a long time without saying anything. I let her have the silence because I could tell she was building towards something and I wanted to hear what it was. Finally, she said it. 7 words. Quiet. Almost a whisper. I knew he was capable of this. 7 words. No apology attached. No explanation of why she'd said nothing. Not before the party, not during, not when I was on the floor. Just the admission, offered now when it was too late to be anything other than a confession. I looked at her for a long time. "I know," I said. And I did. I had always known. I'd just been hoping I was wrong. I wasn't wrong about many things. I want to be clear about something. I am not a vindictive person by nature. I'm a structural engineer from Ballantyne who drives a sensible truck and grills on weekends, and once spent 4 hours helping a neighbor find his lost cat. I don't lie awake dreaming about revenge. I don't have a dramatic bone in my body, but I am methodical, and when a system has a fundamental flaw, a load-bearing wall that was never built right, a foundation that was poured crooked from the beginning, you don't patch it, you don't pretend it isn't there. You document it properly. You bring in the right people, and then you let physics do what physics does. Physics, in this case, took approximately 11 days. Let me tell you how it went for everybody. Brent was formally charged on Monday morning with felony assault inflicting serious bodily injury, North Carolina General Statute 1432.4 for those keeping score at home. The charge carries a sentence range that Brent's attorney immediately tried to negotiate down from, which told me everything I needed to know about how strong he thought our case was. He was arraigned on Tuesday. The Charlotte Observer ran a brief item about it, just a paragraph, buried in the local crime section. But the internet is forever, and several people who knew Brent from his App State days apparently found it very shareable. The youth football league Brent coached for called him on Wednesday. He was placed on indefinite administrative leave pending the outcome of the case. The official statement used the phrase commitment to the safety of our young athletes twice. I appreciated the irony. His bail conditions prohibited him from contacting me, from contacting Corbett Malone, and from attending any family gatherings where I might be present, which meant, among other things, that Brent Gotobed was legally prohibited from attending family events in a family whose name is Gotobed. I want you to understand that I did not engineer this specifically, but I will admit I enjoyed it specifically. Gavin Purcell's statement, the prior assault, now part of the record, elevated this from a one-time incident to a documented pattern of behavior. Brent's attorney went very quiet when that came up. The kind of quiet that attorneys go when they realize the thing their client told them wasn't the whole story. The civil suit I filed against Brent personally was separate from the criminal charge. Thaddeus filed it on a Thursday, and I understand that Brent received the paperwork on a Friday, 1 week to the day after I hit Corinne's porch floor. I like symmetry. Waverly, who had stood over me on the floor of her mother's house and accused me of ruining her birthday while I lay unable to move, had made one significant error in judgment that evening. She had filmed part of it on her phone, not the lead-up, not Brent's approach. Just the aftermath, me on the ground, Loretta telling me to walk it off, Corbett crouching beside me. She'd filmed it the way people film things at parties when they think something embarrassing is happening to someone they don't like. For laughs. For the group chat. That 17-second video became Exhibit A. It also became Exhibit A in the court of public opinion, when it was subpoenaed and subsequently through channels I was not involved in and cannot speak to, found its way to people who found it as illuminating as I did. The response to it was not kind. Waverly's social media presence, previously dedicated to lifestyle content and birthday celebration posts, including a smiling selfie posted at 11:14 p.m. on the night in question, captioned, "Best birthday ever," underwent a significant audience adjustment. I did not feel bad about this. Waverly had called me a baby while I was lying paralyzed on her mother's floor, and she had taken a video of it for her amusement. There is a price for that. The price in her case was several thousand Instagram followers and a comment section she eventually had to disable. A bargain, honestly, given the circumstances. Corinne was a more complex situation. She hadn't shoved me, she hadn't filmed me. She hadn't even said anything particularly awful in the immediate aftermath. She just stood near the window with her arms folded and watched, which was, if anything, worse. But Thaddeus Birch is a thorough man. The civil suit named Corinne as a secondary defendant, on the grounds that she had knowingly hosted an environment where prior physical aggression had occurred, and had taken no steps to prevent its recurrence. This was not a stretch. There were text messages pulled from the discovery process with a thoroughness that impressed even me, in which Corinne had discussed Brent's temper, specifically in the context of his interactions with me. In one message sent to Loretta 14 months before the party, she had written, "Just keep Dale and Brent separated tonight. You know how Brent gets." You know how Brent gets. She knew. She hosted the party anyway. She did not keep us separated. And now her assets were tied up in civil proceedings and her house, the colonial on Ideal Way, the museum of her own importance, was in play. Last I heard, it was listed. I want to be honest. There was a part of me that almost felt something for Corinne Gotobed. She was a woman who'd spent 20 years in that house, raising children who had, whatever their other qualities, apparently inherited her tendency to underestimate people who were quieter than them. And now she was selling it. Then I remembered lying on her porch floor while she watched with her arms folded, and the almost feeling went away. This one is harder to say. Not because I am still in love with Loretta. I am not. And I think I stopped being in love with her somewhere around the 3rd year of her family's sustained campaign of contempt, though I kept hoping the marriage was repairable right up until she told me to walk it off. But because 7 years is 7 years, and even bad structures leave marks on the landscape when they come down. Loretta had laughed off the prenuptial agreement as unnecessary when we got married. She'd said it with that particular smile, the one that meant she thought it was quaint and slightly insulting, that I'd even brought it up. I had smiled back and said nothing. The prenuptial agreement was filed on the same day as our marriage license. Thaddeus Birch, who I had been referred to originally by a colleague at Crestline 4 years ago, for a completely unrelated matter, had drawn it up. It was thorough. It was unambiguous. It had been signed by both of us in the presence of 2 witnesses and a notary. Loretta's attorney called it surgical. I'm told he said this with the slightly defeated tone of someone who has found the other side's foundation to be load-bearing in all the right places. She walked away from our marriage with what she'd brought into it. Nothing more. Before the divorce was finalized, she came to see me once at the rehabilitation center. I was doing physical therapy, learning, slowly, stubbornly, to reintroduce myself to my own legs. She sat in the visitor area and looked at me with an expression I hadn't seen on her before. Not the managed concern from the hospital. Not the coached sympathy of the arraignment period. Something more honest than that. "I should have told you," she said, "about Brent, a long time ago." "You should have," I agreed. I thought if I just kept the peace. You kept his peace, Loretta, not mine. She didn't have an answer for that. We sat there for a while longer, and then she left, and I went back to physical therapy, and that was the last real conversation we ever had. 8 weeks later, I walked out of the Atrium Health Rehabilitation Center on a Tuesday morning in late autumn, under a sky that couldn't decide if it was going to be gray or blue, and finally settled on both. I walked out under my own power, slowly, with a cane I planned to be rid of by Christmas, but under my own power. Roscoe was waiting by his car in the parking lot. He had 2 coffees. He is a reliable man in that way. "How do you feel?" he asked. Like a man who just walked out of a rehabilitation center under his own power. Good answer. Thaddeus Birch was there too, which surprised me. He was standing slightly to the side with a leather briefcase and the expression of a man who has something to hand someone. He handed me an envelope. "Brent Gotobed accepted the plea," he said. 22 months, minimum security, mandatory anger management, and 3 years probation following release. Gavin Purcell's statement was the thing that closed it. I nodded. The civil settlement from Corrine and Brent is in there too. Covers your medical costs, rehabilitation, lost income, and... He paused, the way attorneys pause when they're about to say a number. Damages. I looked at the envelope. "Is it enough to be annoying to them?" I asked. Thaddeus almost smiled. "Very annoying." Roscoe drove me back to Ballantyne. I'd sold the house, our house, mine and Loretta's, during the proceedings, and I'd found a smaller place, a clean, quiet townhouse on the other side of the suburb, with good light in the mornings and no memories in the walls. I was starting to like it. That evening, I sat in my car in the parking lot of Crestline Industrial Group, which I hadn't visited since the Friday before the party. I'd been on medical leave, the kind of leave where people send awkward get-well emails and don't know what else to say. I was going back Monday. I was ready. I sat there in the quiet and looked at the building for a while, just taking it in, the familiar geometry of it, the way the late afternoon light hit the glass facade. Structural, solid, still standing. My phone buzzed. An unknown number. A message. Short. I read it, then I read it again. Then, for the first time in 8 weeks, I smiled. Really smiled. The kind that starts somewhere behind the sternum and works its way out before you can stop it. I won't tell you what the message said. You don't need to know. Some things belong to the person they happen to. Some conclusions don't need to be shared to be complete. What I will tell you is this. I put the phone in my pocket, started the truck, and pulled out of the parking lot. And I drove home. If you like this story, join our community by hitting that like button and subscribing for more real, raw, and family-centered stories. And as always, thank you for being a part of this sphere.